Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Borough TV. Thank you for joining us for our live stream today. This afternoon, our discussion is going to be with Councilwoman Samantha Whitfield, and we are going to be discussing a little bit about something that we're hoping isn't going overlooked during the COVID-19 pandemic and quarantine. You've probably seen some things in your mail. You've probably seen some things on TV regarding the 2020 census. Councilwoman, how are you? Welcome.
Good. How you doing?
Doing good. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us for this series. We are still doing this series on COVID-19 and our community. And part of that is right now, we're on shutdown. There's still a census in play, a very important census, as a matter of fact.
Very
And
important.
we just want to talk about that a little bit so that we can get the community engaged and talk about the importance of filling out the census information.
Yeah, absolutely. As you said, we are in the throes of a pandemic right now, which is
Hmm.
not just affecting us here in Willingboro, but across the state, across the country, across the world.
Right.
So this is such a monumental experience that we're going through as a global culture. But here in the United States, this is a huge effort. The census, that is a huge effort that only takes place once every 10 years.
Right.
So this is something that we've been preparing
Hmm.
um, for, the past 9 years, to be able to update our population counts, as well as some of our demographic counts, to determine so much funding, billions of
Right.
dollars of federal funding, and where it goes, and to what communities it goes to.
And let's
Um,
let's talk about that a little bit. A lot of people don't really know why the census is so important to our communities, and I'm sure that some people don't know where this information goes and why it's important to the growth of our communities when it comes to our school systems, uh, care for our seniors, different things. What are some of the things that are affected by the census count?
So there are so many areas that are affected by our census numbers.
Mhm.
As you said, our schools care for our seniors and our aging population, care for our youngest citizens and our babies. Um, we said school funding,
Hmm.
housing funding,
Yeah.
food subsidy funding, highways and infrastructure funding, hospitals, libraries. The list goes on of
Hmm.
all of the things that are affected by the census numbers. And as I said, billions of dollars in federal funding
Right.
is determined by who responds to the census, when the numbers are counted.
Okay. I'm sure that some people have already received census information in the mail. They may have received it via email. What are some of the questions that are generally found on the census forms?
So, as you said, census information has gone out.
Hmm.
National Census Day is April 1st. And that's not only the day that we really start to publicize the census, and it's a big launch day, but
Hmm.
that's also the date that we use to count where you are. So, if you're responding to the census, you should respond based on who is living in your house
Right.
on April 1st.
Okay.
Uh, and further than that, the timeline, just goes on from there. But you should have gotten at least a letter and a postcard reminder to respond online.
Hmm.
Um, that is the newest way to respond, and this is actually the first census that you're able to respond online and on an online platform. You're actually able to respond in three different ways without having someone come to your house. So you're able to respond online, via phone, or via the paper questionnaire. I know some folks haven't gotten their paper questionnaires yet, so that should be coming. But even if you haven't received your paper questionnaire, you can respond online or
Right.
by.
Okay. And we just actually shared some information of how it looks when you go online. You can go to 2020 census.gov or just type in census.gov, and there's some tabs there that you can click on in order to get started in the
Right.
process of completing the census information. When you think of the census, some people might compare it to jury duty. It is a civic duty.
It is.
And like most civic duties, some people try to run away from it and they don't want to have anything to do with it.
Right.
We're not gonna get into talking about the people who evade jury duty, but we're just gonna talk about the 2020 census, and it's important to do so. What can you say to people who have reservations about filling out census forms? Some people feel like it's an invasion of privacy. Like, why they got to know how many people were in my house? Stuff like that. So, what can we say to them to kind of ease those fears?
So there are a lot of things, and I know many people have an aversion to the government being
Hmm.
so close and in touch with what's going on
Right.
in individual homes,
Hmm.
and that's completely understandable. But when you think about it, the census and how we expect our government to provide for its citizens
Hmm.
really they're tied so tightly together, and
Right.
it plays a real part. It's kind of hard to draw that separation when you expect something from the government, but
Hmm.
you're not expecting of yourself to be able to provide them with the information that they need to be able to give you what you want and what you deserve.
Right.
So some of the questions on the census, I know people may think it's an invasion of privacy. They do ask you for your name and your birth date information. And those questions are for like ancestry information as
Hmm.
well. So if anyone has used ancestry.com or any of those ancestry search engines, a lot of the information that you're pulling up and you're able to draw that lineage from is from census data,
Right.
from your relatives and your ancestors responding to the census, and you're able to see their responses and draw those conclusions from that data. So that's one of the reasons why they ask for your name and your birthday information. They also ask for your phone number, and that's just if they have any questions or any follow-ups. If something didn't go right or didn't take well, they can call you and follow up and get the missing data that they need.
Right.
They ask for relational status.
Hmm.
Because I think relational status and how households are made up now is very important for other people to understand, especially folks that are trying to provide services to our communities. It's so important that they understand how our households are made up, especially when we live in many multi-generational households. Some of our households may be people that aren't related to us, and
Right.
it's important to share that information so that you can receive the best resources and be
Hmm.
able to for the government to be able to share the resources or provide the resources that are needed for your community.
Right. And while we're on the subject of information being shared, I understand that fraud is so big everywhere.
Right.
And right now, even during the 2020 census, and while the government is trying to gather information from every household, there may be some people going around who are posing to be part of the census process, and they're soliciting information from people in order to use that information for fraudulent purposes. What are some things that the government will not ask for? I know you mentioned that they would ask for birth dates, but I believe that like social security numbers is something that they would
They
never ask you for a social security number.
They
Right,
will not ask you for that. So
right.
if you have someone coming to your house asking you for your social security number,
Mm-hmm.
your bank account information,
Yes.
your political party affiliation,
Mm-hmm.
that is not associated with
Right,
a decennial census. So
right.
keep those things in mind. I know there is a lot of fear of responding to some of these things, and how do you know if the census that you received is a real census? And there's
Mm-hmm.
reports of fake census forms being sent out by political parties or things like that to try to gather information and
Right,
capitalize off of the national census effort. So if they ask for your political party affiliation, that is not a question on the census. If it's
right.
asking for your bank account information,
Oh,
it is not a part of the census.
right.
Asking for your social security number, it is
Not
not
a part
a
of
part
the
of the
census.
census. So keep those
Right.
things in mind. There also is a lot of fear about responding if you are not a citizen of this country. Um,
Mm.
and that is something else that there was a lot of debate and controversy over the citizenship question. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
it didn't actually make it onto the census this time around.
Right.
So you can rest assured that they will not ask if you are a citizen of the United States, but even non-citizens should respond to the census.
Right.
We need to know how many people are actually here. So you don't have to have that fear of responding and being targeted, or your community being targeted, because they don't share individual data of responses from your
Right.
personal household. The smallest that you can get data is on the block group level, and that's just a collection of streets. So in Willingboro here, if you think of the district that you live in, your voting district, that's about the smallest level of data that people can get. And that it would be basic data. How many people live in that area? What's the racial breakdown? What's the age breakdown? Sometimes education level and things like that that are collected in other census efforts.
Okay. And what about our friends and family living in Puerto Rico?
Oh,
Yeah.
So Black and brown communities historically have been labeled as hard to count communities. Here in Willingboro, we've had a fairly all right turnout, 75% response rate in the 2010 census. But especially right now, because of the pandemic, a lot of our numbers, our response rates are trending downwards, are trending below expectations.
In like the 50s, right?
Right. So our local response rate is actually, I believe, I just looked it up right before we got on, and it's sitting at 55.1% right now, which is pretty good.
Right.
Considering that's pretty good considering, everything that's going on right now.
Right. Of course.
But we can't provide, 100% of the resources and coverage that we need for the community with 55% resources being
definitely
allocated.
We got to go full throttle.
Right. We need full throttle, full representation. In Puerto Rico, they're only at about 10-15%.
Right.
Response rate. So especially with the climate change and their uptick in natural disaster and weather-related occurrences, it's so important that they have a complete count as well, to be able to receive the funding that should be allocated with their area. So if you have friends or family or know anyone in Puerto Rico, please inform them of how important it is, how it will help the island get more of the resources that it deserves, and to respond.
And especially in these times, because in recent months, Puerto Rico has been through a lot. With the earthquakes that they've had to deal with, there's so much destruction, and something like the census and making sure that we have accurate information can be very detrimental when it comes to helping and getting the aid that is necessary in Puerto Rico.
Right. And that's not just for Puerto Rico. That's everywhere. It's a national effort.
Right.
So anywhere that you can think of, everyone is going through this at the same time. And everyone should be responding. So if we have response rates that are lower than what is represented here, move and make decisions based on resources that are not equivalent to what we should be getting and what the federal government itself would deem necessary to provide for the number of, or the population that you're serving.
Right.
So, it's important to respond as soon as possible.
Yeah, definitely.
Right.
Yeah. So that's something that we really want to push, is making sure that people go log on, do what you have to do today if you can, and respond ASAP, so that we can get these numbers up and get them where they need to be. Councilwoman, I'm sorry.
There's also been an adjustment to the schedule because of the pandemic. So I believe that the census numerators that would normally come and knock on your door won't be, starting that effort until early June. Okay. So we still have some time. And I know a lot of people will be apprehensive about people coming to their door and opening their door for strangers.
Yeah.
That's a legitimate concern.
It is.
You don't want people coming to your house to answer the census.
But
Go
it
on,
doesn't take long. It
it
just
doesn't
takes a
take
few
long.
minutes. Yeah.
It doesn't take long. So go online,
Hmm.
call, fill out the questionnaire, and send it back. Really,
Right.
10 minutes, 10 questions, and it covers us for the next 10 years. So that's
Hmm.
another major part of this, is that this is our shot. This is our one shot
Yeah. Yeah.
for the next 10 years to
Yeah. You
say,
got to make it count.
right,
Literally.
right. Make yourself count, make the people in your
Right.
household count.
Right.
And I wish I could count my pets too, because if we could get some funding for them too, I would.
Hmm.
But anybody that's living in your house, make sure you count yourself, your parents, your grandparents if they
Right.
live there, your sister's kids, your play auntie, your cousins,
Uh-huh.
anybody that's living in your house
Yes.
or that was living in your house on April 1st. Make sure that they are being counted.
Absolutely. Before we end, is there anything else that you want to add regarding the census?
Any other things that I would add?
Hmm.
So I would definitely say that there's strength in numbers. And
Hmm.
we've seen this. We've known it. We've experienced it so many times over history that there is strength in numbers.
Absolutely.
And when it comes to the census, this is our chance to show our numbers. This is our chance to show our who lives in our community and where they live in the United States. This doesn't only cover us for funding, but it also covers us for political representation,
Hmm.
because districts will be drawn based on the numbers in the census. So if you are undercounted or underrepresented in an area, they will or could possibly take away representation, take away delegates from your area, because you don't have the population
Right.
to have that much weight. So
Hmm.
it's so important that we have accurate representation on not just our municipal level, but on our state level and especially on our federal level, that are going to be advocating on behalf of us, and make sure that we have the number of voices that are necessary to advocate on behalf of us at those levels. So,
Excuse me.
uh-uh.
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah. I
But
know. That's the look I get every time. I'm telling you,
every
it's
time you
horrible.
talk, right?
Oh,
It can't even
bronchitis.
stop anymore.
Can't escape it. But
Yeah.
Councilwoman, thank you so much for joining us. We've been asking everyone while we're doing this series who comes and go live with us to leave us with some words of inspiration for the community. I know we talked about the census and making sure that we're counted. So I'm hoping that everyone understands that part and they get the gist of it, that they basically need to fill out those forms and get the census done. But regarding COVID-19, regarding the quarantine, the pandemic, is there anything that you want to say to strengthen our people?
I would say find your peace. That's been something that I've been working through in this time, in quarantine, and with our social distancing, or as I like to call it, our physical distancing,
Mhm.
because it's so important for us to stay socially connected to one another, to check on one another, and to find your own personal peace. Really, this can be an important time of reflection where you can go back, think about what's important to you, think about how you've been prioritizing things in your life, and maybe that priority list needs to be adjusted.
Mm.
Maybe you need to, move your physical health up on that list, and maybe bring your career can stand to take a notch down.
Right.
Maybe you should put your family or your kids up a little further, and
Hmm.
connecting with them on a deeper level, and asking questions that you don't normally ask, getting to know each other, learning new things, practicing self-care, always practicing self-care, and making sure you are in a good mental space is so important during this time. I've taken up gardening and I started a little container garden in my
No,
back, um, and started a few art projects and doing what I need to do to just
right.
keep myself sane and and make sure I'm in a good space to be able to care for others. So if you can't care for yourself, it's going to be so much more difficult to care for others. And that's our responsibility, to not only care for ourselves, but take care of the people around us and take care of our communities. So
I agree. I agree. Thank you so much, Councilwoman, for your kind words and for all the information regarding the 2020 census. Again, if anyone wants to go and to visit the website, it's 2020census.gov. It's very important to visit that website when you can. Like we said before, it does not take long at all to fill out the information. Even if you have a house full of people, it's very easy to do. So, everyone, thank you so much for joining us at Borough TV for this series. We're looking forward to seeing you all again soon, and we hope that you all have a great weekend. Again, Councilwoman, thank you so much for joining us today.
thank you so much.
All right.
Good night.